So I'd like to talk about Brambling and Twite, but I can't really talk about those without talking about Ruff first. They're kind of cut from the same archetype. So Ruff was introduced in the European expansion, and we can see at the bottom here, its power reads, tuck up to 3 cards from your hand behind this bird, draw 1 for each card you tucked. Leading up to Wingspan Asia, I had Ruff ranked as my #1 teal power bird. It has some stiff competition these days with some of the teal powers introduced in Wingspan Asia, but that's a topic for another video. So we can see that Brambling and Twite operate in a similar fashion to the Ruff. Their power is a bit different. Twite reads, draw 2 cards from the deck and then add them to your hand. Then tuck any 2 cards from your hand behind this bird. Now, Brambling at first read might seem to have exactly the same power as the Twite, but there's an important nuance here. Brambling says draw 2 cards from the deck and add them to your hand. That's the same. Then tuck up to 2 cards from your hand behind this bird. So the Brambling actually lets you decide whether to tuck or not, and the Twite forces you to tuck. This adds an extra layer of versatility and tactical decision making to the Brambling that just makes it even better. So when I say, Brambling and Twite get on the board and score 10 points no matter what, the Brambling obviously has that potential to score less if you decide to hold cards back. And that can be pretty amazing when you have 0 cards in hand. You can draw 2, and if you get 2 amazing cards, you can keep them, and you're not forced to get rid of them like you would be with the Twite. Now, it occurred to me when I was looking at these birds earlier that once you pay the 2 food and you get Brambling and Twite down on the board, they're 10-point birds. No questions asked. They're going to draw those 2 cards off the top of the deck no matter what, no matter how many cards you have in your hand, and they're going to tuck 2 cards no matter what. And on top of that, if you happen to have a surplus of cards laying around, maybe you got a good wetlands going and you can, hold on to 4+ cards, you're going to be able to take your worst cards and potentially turn them into better cards. That's pretty amazing for the cost of 2 food. I mean, when you think about it, how many birds cost 2 food and can score 10 points? We have things like the warblers that cost 2 food and they're 7 to 8 points respectively with a 2 to 3 egg nest. And Twite and Brambling, by comparison, you pay 2 food, you get them on the board, and they're going to score 10 points no matter what. Now, Ruff has a higher scoring cap of 14, but you have to keep those cards in your hand. You have to have that fuel ready for the Ruff, and that can be easier said than done. There have been multiple times where I've gotten the Ruff, be like, okay, great card, get it on the board, and then it's kind of a struggle to not only keep the cards that you want to play, but then also have the fuel for the Ruff on top of that. Now, if you can maintain that, cycling those cards and scoring points and even having the ability to snipe birds off the tray at the end of the round is pretty amazing. Now, Mandarin Duck and Ruddy Shelduck, by comparison, they don't have as high of a point scoring threshold, but they can look at a lot more cards. They're at the end of the round, they're drawing 5 cards from the top of the deck, so by the start of round 3, you're looking at 15 cards, and then you have round 4 to do something about it. And Brambling and Twite, by comparison, they're looking at 6 cards by the start of round 3, which is still pretty great. Ruddy Shelduck doesn't have as much of a drawback as the Mandarin Duck. The Mandarin Duck has to hand a card to an opponent, and the Ruddy Shelduck doesn't have to do that. So its power is better by comparison in that regard. But having that capability does increase its food cost to 3 from 2. So all of these birds are great to have on the board just to see a bunch more cards without spending any action cubes. But they can also score a tremendous amount of points. The birds from Wingspan Asia on the top here all do that passively. You don't have to have any fuel in your hand for them. Ruff, by comparison, you got to keep those 3 cards around, which can be easier said than done. So when we start looking at what Brambling and Twite can really do at the end of the day, it really starts to draw comparisons to like Benelli's Eagle and Eastern Imperial Eagle. Those birds are able to circumvent their food costs by tucking cards under them, and they're great late game point bombs, and everyone wants to see them before the end of the game, and nobody wants to see their opponent get them. I think Brambling and Twite are going to fall into that same category here. not only in your home games now, but eventually when the digital game implements Wingspan Asia, these are going to be highly sought after cards to get on the board. 2 food for 10 points. I mean, that's an amazing bargain that's not really matched by any other type of bird. Other birds, by comparison, they might have a brown power or something like that, where they have to use successive actions to rack up those extra points, and you have to make tactical decisions in the moment, like, do I run this engine, do I not run this engine in order to deny a card, or hey, the food I need popped up in the tray. All these little tactical decisions and all these big strategic decisions that you have to make during the course of the game could either increase or decrease the value of any particular bird that you've played. But Twite and Brambling, get them on the board, boom, 10 points. Mandarin duck, ruddy shell duck, 7 points. And not only that, but these birds are letting you just see way more cards at the end of every round than, any other type of non-wetland engine. I mean, you can play a grassland engine or a forest engine and not really have a wetland engine to speak of, and these birds are letting you see large quantities of cards over the course of a game. And anytime you've got a card that's letting you kind of break the normal parameters of the game, or getting a resource that you haven't specifically built into, those are amazing birds to keep your eye on. I mean, we have to look no further than the Power 4, or like Wood Duck by comparison. Wood Duck letting you draw cards from the forest, and the Power 4 letting you get food or cards respectively from the grasslands. Now with the Mandarin and the Shell Duck, you're going to be looking at those 5 cards, and granted you can only keep one, but that is a tremendous filtering effect. You look at those 5 cards, you're keeping the best one for yourself. You're tucking the second best one behind the bird. You're giving your opponent the worst bird, and then you're discarding the other one. And then the shell duck doesn't even have to worry about giving a card to your opponent. So really what all of these birds are doing by nature, by consequence of their teal power, is that they're giving you points and resources without spending action cubes. And in this game where you only have 26 actions, action cubes are the most valuable resource. So when you can gain points and resources without spending those action cubes, you're essentially getting free turns. What do you guys think about these teal powers? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it. And make sure to check out my teal power ranking article on wingsplain.com. The link will be in the description. Thanks for watching.